No role plays, just real. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader.
We've never really, as a workforce, spent a lot of time on making sure we're developing good leaders.
We'll be able to share stories, experience, mistakes, failures, successes.
This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on this episode, we're going to be recapping the last 2 months of the Hacking Your Leadership podcast with the Monday.com article on leadership theories. If you hear anything you like today on a specific leadership theory that kind of resonates with you, go back and listen to that episode because it will be you'll be able to get more in depth on that particular one. But I think it's whenever we go through a series like this, I do think it's important to have a recap, to have kind of like an overarching view of why this is important or why we decided to do it in the first place, and that is because you need to know why you tend to lead a certain way without any kind of without any specific training or coaxing from anybody else, just kind of like how your specific talents and skills and values come out in your leadership style. That's going to happen. But it's also going to be important to know that there are different styles out there, because if you gravitate towards a certain style because that's the way someone led you and you like the way that is, that will come out in your actions toward your people as you grow as a leader. And knowing where those come from and knowing where they're rooted will mean that you'll be able to almost like sharpen that tool and use it in a way that is the most effective, as opposed to it kind of happening haphazardly, even if it is effective. And so as you kind of grow as a leader, I think it's important to really figure out why certain leadership styles resonate with you more than others. What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, I agree. Like I think that there was a lot that this series that it's made us kind of think about and question, theories that we really quickly aligned with, and then those that we were like, this doesn't feel right. And then we said, well, wait a minute, there might be a space for this, and this might be the right thing for somebody. And so I think that having the dialogue, talking about these and going kind of in depth into not only like what the definition is, but like what does that look like in real life, day-to-day leadership, I think it's so important because the ability to flex as a leader, the ability to adjust and adapt to what either the person in front of you needs or the situation may need, I think is a critical step. And I think that if there's one thing that somebody asked me this the other day, shout out to Gary, he asked me about what was like the biggest leadership lessons that came out of everything that happened through 2020, 2021. Obviously, we've talked a little bit about that on the podcast. But what I think, and what I told him was, I think it really solidified some elements of leadership that we always knew were important and we always felt were important. And then when things really, everybody was challenged, there's a lot of change going on, there's a lot of the unknown, there was elements of anxiety and stress. When those relationships and when that style of leadership that we've always felt was good, was needed, it was a much easier, I think, transition, and it was very comfortable for people to have real dialogue, real conversations about real things that were going on. And so I said, I think it kind of solidified some of those types of elements of leadership. I think the other part of it, though, was that we learned the importance of being adaptable and being curious and being transparent and being, having humility to say, I've never done this before. And I've never, we've never done this before. And I'm okay saying that out loud because we have to figure this out. And we have to figure out different approaches and creative ways to solve for, whatever might be in front of us. And, for some organizations and individuals, that was no longer having a job because of layoffs and furloughs and everything like that. For other individuals, it was doing a different job. For some people, it was doing that job at home. For some other people, it was doing a different job at home in a different way. Like there's just so many things that happened in that space that for me, talking about all these leadership theories, that's really what that's kind of what I got out of the conversation and dialogue was like, yeah, like there's a lot of them, and all of them have a space and a reason where we may need to consider it and think about it and then apply that theory in the moment. And if we don't have all of those tools on our tool belt, we can find ourselves in difficult situations and places where we don't know what to do or we don't know what the right call is, and we're applying the wrong theory at the wrong time, which can cause frustration.
Right. One of the things that I got out of this article as a whole, and we've been linking to it in every episode, and we will definitely link to it again in this one, is the Monday.com people really they crystallized a way of looking at the difference between leadership and management that I like, that I've not seen used any other place. And I like it so much that I'm going to be kind of implementing this in my own way of doing things. They say that leadership is a way of thinking and behaving. Management is a set of roles and responsibilities. And the reason I like this is because it does not create a hierarchy between the two. It doesn't say that one is more important or better. It's easy to look at memes out there and say that, oh, leaders are better than managers. That's not true. Every single person has a set of roles and responsibilities. Every person in an organization has a set of roles and responsibilities, which is management. And every person in an organization has a way of thinking and behaving when people report up through them. And that is leadership. So no matter who you are, if people report to you, then you are both a manager and a leader. You are both. You have to be, because you have a way of thinking and behaving, and you have a set of roles and responsibilities. Where this article comes into play and why this is so important is that your set of roles and responsibilities is hopefully very clearly defined. Your organization defines them for you. You knew what they were when you applied. Maybe they've changed over time. You've gotten promoted over time. You've taken on different roles and responsibilities. There could be some ambiguity on some day-to-day things, but in general, if you had to write down what your roles and responsibilities were, you'd be able to write them down. A lot of people can't say the same thing about their way of thinking and behaving. They can't necessarily write down, oh, how do you lead as a person? What? What do you mean? Mm-hmm. Like, write it down. If you say to them, write down your roles and responsibilities, great, give me a pen. I'm 5 minutes, I'm done, right? So knowing what way you think and behave as a leader is so important, because if you can define your role as a manager, but you can't define your role as a leader, how are you going to A, improve at it, or B, even know what it is that you're doing that impacts the lives and the roles of the people who are reporting up to you? So whether you are currently a leader and this isn't something that comes easy to you, or you want to be a leader and you want to make sure that when you get your first leadership position that you are kind of hitting the ground running and you know how to do this right, this is what it comes down to. Can you articulate why it is you do the things that you do, what it's rooted in, and can you use that to think about where your strengths and weaknesses are in order to improve on the things that you need to improve on? Because if you're focusing on improving something that you don't even like to begin with, you're never going to get good at it. But if you know exactly where you come from, what the combination of your genetics, your history, the leadership lessons you've learned from leaders that you've reported to, people that you've loved and people that you've disdained, all of those things have led to you being who you are right now. And if you have the ability to kind of look at different theories of leadership and think, okay, I like this, I don't like this, focus on one or two, and then dig deep into them and figure out how to use them as tools to more effectively get done your set of roles and responsibilities, you're going to be much more effective at being a leader. Otherwise, you're basically just, kind of looking back and going, oh, that worked. I wonder why that worked. I have no idea, but let's just hope it happens again. That's definitely not an effective way of going about things.
Yeah, no, and I love the call out around, just that you need to be a leader and a manager.
Right.
Especially when you have definitions like this that make you understand, like there's definitely a necessity for being in both spaces. There's a need for mission and vision and values and painting the picture for people. And there's also a need for not only painting the picture, but like teaching them how to paint.
Yes.
And that's what really management is, right? So like I like that a lot. I think the other thing too that we discussed and that I learned was like the amount of overlap. There's a lot of very similar theories. There's some nuance. There's an adjustments, but like there's quite a bit of overlap in what these have evolved to over the years and how they've kind of broken out a little bit into a little bit of a different space. But I think the ones that helped me the most was the transformational and transactional. And then I think the thing that really caught me was, I think it was in the transactional theory, just the idea that like some people need and want that. right? Like we have this way of feeling like, well, if you don't want transformational leadership, if you don't want this high level of inspiration or vision or this type of thing, you just want to be able to come somewhere and be yourself and show up well and do the job, and that for you is a comforting space. And it's an empowering space, and that's what you prefer as a person. There's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? And so many times, I think as leaders, like this day and age, we kind of get in that space of like, well, if they don't want more, if they're not, ambitious about growing their career, if they're not, constantly looking to move forward, then like, kind of what's the space that they fill? Well, they fill a very important space, which is somebody who wants to come to work and do a good job and then go home. And somebody who can learn skill and efficiency and effectiveness over time, but they don't have this need to be fulfilled in a certain situation or a certain way at their job. And that's okay too. Again, as long as they're continuing to do great work, as long as they're continuing to be somebody who's productive and helpful on the team, that's perfectly fine. And I think for a lot of leaders, because time can be, we don't have enough time for everything that we want to do. A lot of times we will dedicate our efforts and how we spend our time to only those people that are just like, give me more responsibility. I want to grow. I want to develop. Go. Which of course we need to give them that space and that time, but we also have to be conscious and making sure that our transactional people are feeling just as good and feeling just as welcome and are feeling just as recognized for the work that they're doing, without this caveat of, and then now you have to have more. Like it's okay to say you're doing just fine, and I appreciate it, and I see you, and you're doing great work, and thank you for that. And just know that your work is not going unnoticed. And if there's ever a time when you're looking for more work or more growth or whatever that might be, let us know, because you're doing a great job now.
I love that a lot. I think in most organizations where you have a disconnect between leaders and their people, it's where the leader is one of those two things, and the person they're trying to lead is the other of those two things, where you have a transactional leader and who has to lead people who are looking for those relationships, who are looking for growth, and the leader just says, well, the way to get there is to do this job better. And it's like, well, like that means nothing to me. Define that. Help me figure this out together. If you can't do that because you're a transactional leader, you're gonna have a real hard time leading people who want that transformational leadership style. And vice versa. If you are a very transformational leader, like what you just said, Lorenzo, if you have people who just want to come in and do their best work, but they're not looking to move up. When I hear leaders say that they have a hard time with people like that, to me what that says is, okay, so what you're saying is you want the carrot of the next promotion or the next thing to be able to hold in front of somebody in order to get them to do their job better. And when they don't want that, they've taken away your power as a leader because you have nothing to offer them from a transactional standpoint. All you have is the relationship and the transformational part, which they don't care about, which means they've effectively disarmed you as a leader. Well, that's not good enough. If you're a leader, you need to be able to lead that person anyway, even if it means what they're looking for is just the kudos they've done their job well, and the open door policy of making sure they can come to you if they ever do want something more, and to leave them alone to do their job well as long as that's what they're doing. And again, one isn't better than the other. It's just, do you have the ability as a leader to know where your people are and meet them where they are? So yeah, I agree. This is where a lot of problems lie. The one that kind of resonated with me the most in this series, because it resonates with the things that I've struggled with my own career, is situational leadership theory. And that's because I love the coaching and supporting of individual people. The directing and delegating is something that I don't do as well. And so if somebody doesn't need any coaching or support, they can just do it on their own. That's fine, but I'm still trying to figure out how do I insert myself and contribute in some way. And that can look like I'm trying to micromanage, or if someone just wants to be delegated to go and do their thing because they do it well, unless they say it flat out, again, I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I contribute? And because I contribute well in the supporting and coaching space, those other two things where you have people who are either just, they need to be told what to do because that's their job, or people who just need to be left alone because they know what they're doing and they can do it well. They don't need that part of me, so it's harder for me to feel like I'm contributing as a leader. And so, when I saw that on paper for the first time, this was many years ago now, it was kind of like this light bulb moment of, oh, when things don't go well for me as a leader, this is why they don't go well, because I'm trying to do this when in reality the person needs this. And so again, no matter who you are as a leader of people, if you can look at these theories and think to yourself, oh, you can connect them back to successes and failures you've had as a leader with individual relationships, where before you might be thinking to yourself, I don't know why I just can't reach that person. I don't know why every time I interact with that person, it seems to not go well. I'm a good person. They're a good person. Why doesn't it go well? These people, the interactions always seem to go well, but this one person or these people doesn't go well. Well, this is why. It's why, because of something in this article, something where your leadership style is not what they need at that moment. And you can change that, and you can figure out how to meet them where they are if you know exactly what you're doing and how to tweak that.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 minute hack. But first, a few words from our sponsors.
The 1 minute hack.
All right, for this episode's 1 minute hack, here's what I want you to do. Read this article, read through all 8 of these theories, and pick 1 or 2 at the most, not more than 2, that you think resonate with you at a high level, and dig into those 2. None of these theories were created by Monday.com. They were aggregated here. And the article's written really well, but there's so much more about each of these theories out there than just what exists in this article. So don't think this is where the end of the journey is when it comes to your leadership theory or the styles that resonate with you. Find the 1 or 2 that make you think, okay, this is interesting. I can think back to times when the reason why I have a good relationship with a person or a bad relationship can be rooted in my leadership style versus what they are looking for. Pick that 1 or 2 and dig into them. Read about the authors of them, who created them. Go dig into Wikipedia. Any sources that you can find on that particular leadership theory. Read more about it and figure out how to hone it in a way that lets you be a more predictable leader, and a leader that is more focused on knowing why you're doing the things that you're doing, because then it's less kind of like flying by the seat of your pants and more with an intentional way of leading people, because that's what they're looking for and you can meet them where they need it.
Absolutely. And I think it's a great 1 minute hack. And again, deep diving into our theories, taking our own development seriously, and taking the time to reflect upon what else is out there to help us shape, the leaders that we want to be, I think is critical. And there's been so many times when reading about leadership, listening to a theory, doing research on something that I've heard, or reading a book from another author where they say something that completely describes exactly what I felt or what I believe to be in such a better way, in so much better, clearer terms. And I think that's just a big part of it. Is it feels good to sometimes get validation of how you feel things should be when it comes to your own leadership journey, and your own theories of leadership. But it's also really cool when you're able to find a source or a resource that you can go back to make sure that the way you're showing up for your people is the way that you want to show up for your people.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think lastly, it's really important to look at this not just from how you lead people, but the relationship you have with your boss. Because if it's not great, or if it's something that you kind of tolerate, or it's like, yeah, they're okay, but I wish they were different, why that is the case is rooted in something here too. And if the relationship you have with your boss is at least good enough where you can share this information with them, you might teach them something that might lead to you having a better relationship with them as well. And so there's nothing wrong with forwarding an email to somebody and saying, hey, check this out. This might be the reason why we butted heads in the past, because the way this is structured is the way this is structured doesn't make anybody feel like one is better than the other. It's all just who we are as people and how we show up. So it's a good starting point to kind of have the conversation from a disarming standpoint as opposed to making somebody feel backed into a corner.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And have a great day.